My name's Peter Coyote, and my Kuruk friends call me Pnefich. I've lived along the Salmon River and the Klamath River for over 40 years. And I've participated in some of those fish counts, and I've traded homemade elderberry wine for salmon with Kuruk and Yurok people. And I'm very pleased, I'm very grateful to Jack and the two Steves for making this movie. And when I was watching it, I was thinking of Jared Diamond's book called Collapse. I don't know if you've read it, but you should read it. And he has a story in there about Greenland, and how when Greenland was settled by the Danes and by people who considered themselves European, they brought cattle to this island, and they starved to death to the very last person. Every single one starved to the last person. And just on the other side of the drainage were Inuit people who were fat and happy and sassy, eating seals and wild fish and puffins and birds' eggs, because they had adapted to the landscape. And so two things come to mind watching this movie that I just wanted to share with you for a second. The farmers are growing alfalfa. They're not exactly feeding America. They're raising alfalfa to raise cattle. They're raising crops that are being shipped overseas. But when the United States makes a decision to change its policy and change its course, it's unfair to ask the resident population to bear the full cost of it. When we decide that we don't want cattle on the public lands because we want to restore the watersheds, but we pay people not to grow wheat, we ought to pay people not to grow cattle. And if we're going to, and we can task them. We can say, okay, we don't want you to grow cattle, and we're going to give you money not to do that, but we need you to fence off riparian areas. We need you to plant shade trees for the wild fish. All those loggers could be back in the same woods, clearing the salmon streams, building shade, building deep pools. I was on the salmon in 1967 when logging on steep granitic slopes completely wiped out the king salmon in one storm. Filled the reds, the nesting gravels where the salmon breed, with silt. And we lost a whole species in one winter. So the apparent contradiction can be resolved by us as a people saying, yeah, we're getting a deeper understanding, we're getting a deeper appreciation of all the people who have to live in all these places, and we may have to ask people to change the way they live, to live according to the way nature demands. But we don't have to demand that they bear the whole cost. And if we do demand that they bear the whole cost, they'll be our mortal enemies, and nothing will get done. And that's where we can all come in as taxpayers and say, yeah, we want a thriving watershed, we want a thriving planet, and some of our tax dollars may have to go to cut down some of the acreage of alfalfa and some of the tons of potatoes that are being shipped overseas, so that over 50 years or over a century we begin to cut back on some of the farming that was not supposed to be there originally. But we have to understand you can't make the loggers and the farmers bear the whole cost in one lifetime. So that's what came to mind. That's something that I wanted to share with you. That's all I'm going to say. The person who I really want you to meet is Harriet Moss, who's one of the board members of Friends of the River.
One of the reasons we can't buy salmon easily because of the lack of commercial fishing season is because of the Klamath River and the issues on the Klamath. We have an enormous opportunity in front of us to actually change the way things have been operating on the Klamath, and as Stephen says, to restore a major river system and restore the salmon runs there. But this is our opportunity. It's going to be happening over the next year or so. And the more people that know that this is happening, the more likely we are to be able to make that change.